Trying to make pizza at home usually doesn't come out as good as ordering it out, but that's because you're trying to make the wrong pizza. The best pizza to make at home is Detroit style pizza, and if you want to learn how, stick around. I'm going to stroll up to the counter slowly so that I have time to remind you that the first part of our process will always be blooming our yeast. I do this by adding 2 teaspoons or 9 grams of sugar and 2 teaspoons or 7 grams of yeast to 1 cup or 225 grams of water heated to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Stir until everything's dissolved and leave on the counter for about 10 minutes until it looks like this. And now we can start mixing up our dough. Starting with our yeast mixture, we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons or 20 grams of extra virgin olive oil, 1 tablespoon or 9 grams of salt, and 2.5 cups or 300 grams of bread flour. You can also use all-purpose flour if you want. Now we're just going to mix the dough together until it's combined. Don't have to do anything too crazy at this point, just bring it all together so that the flour starts hydrating. Let that rest on the counter for about 5 minutes and then take a wet hand and mix the dough together, making sure that there's no clumps of flour. Once you're satisfied with that, throw it on the counter and we're going to start a series of slap and folds, which I go into more detail on how to do in my focaccia video, but today we're going to go through what happens if you kind of screw it up. So this slap and fold technique is slapping the dough down and flipping the top over, which is a way of kneading wetter and stickier dough. And everything's looking good and coming together until you do it too many times and the dough kind of splits open. In my opinion, there's kind of 2 ways to fix this. The first way is to do what I'm doing and start kind of actually kneading the dough and trying to bring it all back together until one cohesive blob. But generally what I would suggest doing is just letting it rest on the counter for about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then starting the slap and folds back over. When in doubt, gluten needs some time to relax, so if you can just give your dough some time to relax, everything will work out as it should. And I'm going to change my mind and say that there's really only one best way to do this, and that is to give it time. Because even though I was able to kind of bring my dough together with slap and folds, I still let it rest on the counter for 5 minutes before doing another series of slap and folds, and that's how this dough got this beautifully smooth. Now we're going to put it into a well-oiled bowl, cover it with a towel or saran wrap, and let it rise on the counter until doubled in size, about 1 to 1.5 hours. Which gives us the perfect opportunity to make some sauce. Starting with the knife, we're going to cut up 1 whole white onion and 4 garlic cloves. These will be blended up, so a rough chop will do. Into the saucepan of your choice goes 1 tablespoon of butter and a nice glug of olive oil. Melt that together, and then we're going to go in with our onion. Add a generous pinch of salt, and then saute over medium heat for about 2 minutes until translucent. Add your garlic cloves, cook for another 5 minutes or so, and then we're going to add 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. If you don't add the tomato paste, it's okay, but I think it adds a nice depth of flavor to our tomato sauce and makes it more tomatoey. To really make sure we get that depth of flavor, make sure that your tomato paste caramelizes on the bottom of the pan, and then go ahead and add 1 can of San Marzano tomatoes. I like to use the whole tomatoes, but if you do crushed or pureed, you are going to be just fine. Mix all that together and try to scrape off some of the caramelized tomato paste from the bottom of the pan into the sauce, and then just let simmer for 10 minutes. If you want your sauce thicker, let it simmer a little bit longer, 10 to 30 minutes, until more of the water has evaporated. But either way, when you're just about ready to blend, add 1 teaspoon of dried oregano and mix until combined. And now we blend. If you want to transfer it to a food processor or a traditional blender, that's totally cool with me, but I prefer the immersion blender just because it's a quicker cleanup and makes things a little bit more convenient. If you use the immersion blender, make sure that you tilt the pot to give the immersion blender a deeper pool of sauce, otherwise it will probably splatter all over you and it hurts a lot. Another tip is to let the mobility of the blender be your friend. Move it around, use it to stir the sauce. It'll blend up a little bit easier if you don't just keep it in one place. Blend until blended, but don't necessarily have to puree it until it's super duper smooth. But when it's done, transfer to a container of your choice, and mamma mia, you have a pizza sauce. Before we actually get to the assembly, we have to go back to our dough, which should have doubled in size by now, and it's time to punch it down. Try to punch it down lightly because the closer we can keep the dough to its original shape, the easier the next step is. Transfer the dough out of the bowl and onto the counter, and do your best to keep the top on the top because it'll, again, make the next step easier. Now we're just going to divide our dough into two, as this is making two pizzas. And that's if you're using a 9x9 pan like this, but if you have a fancy proper Detroit pizza pan that's bigger, then this recipe might only be enough for one pizza, so adjust accordingly. Now just put your dough into your pan and start flattening it out and stretching it to the sides. You can try to stretch it out a little bit more by hand like this if you want, but really you're just trying to get this whole process started because with a little bit more time the gluten will relax and it will stretch into the size of the pans more easily. Playing with dough takes time and patience, so just give it an initial stretch and let time do the rest. On that note, cover your pans and let them start their final rise. Total rise time is going to be about 45 minutes, but uncover and continue to stretch every 10 to 15 minutes until your pizza dough stretches to the size of the pan. On to our cheese. Apparently what's traditional in Detroit is using something called brick cheese, which I have no idea what that is, so we're going to be using some Monterey Jack and some low moisture mozzarella. The purists will tell you that if you're not using the right cheese cubed the right way with the right specific pan, then you don't have real Detroit pizza. And to that I say, I don't care. I'm just trying to make something delicious. Which we're that much closer to tasting. We're going to start this pizza with a single layer of pepperonis, and we're going to cover that with a few generous handfuls of our cheese. Really make sure you get that cheese into the corners and all the way up against the edges, because it'll caramelize onto the crust and make these amazing little burnt end bits, and it'll be amazing. Add your pizza sauce racing stripes, which you could do after you bake the pizza, but I kind of like it before. And then finish with another layer of pepperonis. For the second pizza, we're going to finish it off with a little salad once it's done, so we're just going to put olive oil and a generous amount of cheese on the pizza for the bake. You've made it to the easy part. These pizzas are going into a 500-degree oven. You're going to rotate them halfway through, but total bake time is going to be about 12 minutes or until they look like this. I'm going to let those cool in the pan for a few minutes before I take them out, which is a good opportunity to make my topping for the cheese pizza, which is arugula with equal parts olive oil and lemon juice, and just toss to combine. Now with the help of a spatula, your pizza should pop right out of the pan, and we are almost there. Finish your cheese pizza with a handful of your arugula salad, and then top both pizzas with a whole bunch of Parmesan cheese, God's gift to earth. What would pizza be without it? I don't want to know. Another curveball that I'm going to throw is hot honey. If you've never put hot honey on your pizza, you're missing out. It's spicy, it's sweet, it's amazing. Put it on your pizza, you'll thank me later. And that's it, folks. You've done it. You've made Detroit style pizza. Now it's just time to cut it, admire it, and devour it. And my opinion is that if you're gonna make this, you may as well make extra. Intentionally make leftovers. Because whether you put it in the fridge and reheat it tomorrow, or you could even freeze it and reheat it next week, but if you double the amount of pizza that you make, you're not gonna double the amount of time that this whole process takes, and you may as well pay it forward to your future self and make all that time worthwhile. Also, please don't judge me for putting ranch on my pizza, but I think it's delicious. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching. It really helps me out if you like this video and subscribe to the channel and share the video with anybody you want. In the meantime, I really hope you give this Detroit pizza a try. I hope you enjoy it, and let me know if you have any questions in the comment section, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.